What up, brawlers? Welcome back to Throwin as we review Fight Night Thompson versus Neal. Daniel, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Really happy to be back at it. Last card of the year. It's been a great 2020 to be a fan of the UFC, a fan of mixed martial arts. So it's uh, it's a little bit of a bittersweet moment for it to be kind of all coming to an end and to a little bit of a climax here.
Definitely. So we're gonna go over a couple fights in the prelims. So before we start off with Jimmy Flick with the Flying Triangle versus Cody Durden. Fantastic win for Jimmy Flick. I knew when I saw him in the Contender Series he'd be something. What were your thoughts on this performance?
Just an awesome finish. Like you said, seeing Jimmy Flick on the Contender Series, you knew this guy had something, and then he comes out here against Cody Durden. It was a slight favorite. This wasn't a tomato can set up for Jimmy Flick. Cody Durden, a solid guy. Flick was barely a favorites fight, and he came out, finished it in the first round. That flying triangle was awesome to watch happen live.
Definitely. So for Cody Durden, probably another prospect on the level of Jimmy Flick. But Jimmy Flick, I don't know, he might, I don't know, with this performance, it was quite impressive. He might get somebody on that top 20 range. I think on the fringe of the top 20. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. He's ready to push towards that top 15. Not necessarily sure he gets somebody in it yet, but something to set up a fight for him to really challenge for a spot.
Alrighty, to the featured prelim, Anthony Pettis versus Alex Morono. Anthony Pettis getting a win, first winning streak in years for him in the UFC. And what were your thoughts on this performance by Pettis? He looked pretty good.
It was just kind of a clinical performance out here for Pettis. Again, like you said, first winning streak in years. He was really efficient. Landed 70% of his total strikes, 50 significant strikes. Just kind of outclassed Morono for 3 rounds. Didn't let himself get taken down. Morono was 1 for 5 on that. So just a solid performance for Anthony Pettis to stay on track, to really legitimizing this sort of, I guess you could say, renaissance for him recently.
Definitely. And for Morono, what's next for him? I think he's a solid fighter. I think we could see him maybe stay in that top 15 range once he strings a couple of wins together. What do you think?
I think so. He's legitimately somebody that I could probably say would stick around the back end of that top 15 for a little while now.
And for Pettis, he said he's moving down to 155. I say he gets Tony Ferguson next. I think, Tony Ferguson's on the wrong end of a streak. And, with Pettis coming back down, I think that's the fight to make. What do you have to say?
Makes perfect sense to me.
Alrighty, to the main card, Marcin Tybura versus Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy getting the best of Tybura in the first round, but Tybura deciding to take it to the ground and absolutely wreck Greg Hardy. What were your thoughts on this matchup?
I mean, there's not a whole lot to say. It was just two big dudes flying at each other for almost 2 full rounds, and then Tybura was able to get it to the ground, and he was impressive with it from there. I mean, they're pretty even in terms of strikes. Tybura threw some more, but pretty even overall. And really, he just kind of outclassed Hardy when he got to the ground. That's what we knew Greg Hardy was going to have to work on, and it just he just wasn't enough in that regard for Tybura, who is looking fairly legitimate as a top 15 guy in this division.
And speaking of top 15, I think Tybura definitely deserves a guy in the top 15. He's been looking quite good lately. He just got put into the top 15. I think Walt Harris would be a great matchup for him. What are your thoughts?
I think so. That would be a really solid matchup. Again, Tybura's been around for a little while, but he's not been challenged at too high of a level. I think that's a good start for him.
For sure, and especially Walt Harris because he is on that losing streak, and Greg Hardy. It's tough to see where he goes from here. I think Ben Rothwell would be a good matchup for him, but I don't know. He can be, if he started earlier, he'd be so good. I think, but it's just weird where his peak is. What do you have to say?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is he's an older fighter already, and he's still kind of figuring things out. There's a place for him, and there's enough heavyweight guys right around the back end of that top 15, and I would say even into the 20s that would be good fits for him. It's just a matter of figuring out who that is and what the UFC really thinks they have with Greg Hardy.
For sure. All right, to the next bout of the evening, Marlon Moraes versus Rob Font. Um, my jaw dropped when I saw this. I did not expect Rob Font to come out and beat Moraes. Rob Font over a year layoff with that ACL injury, and he just pieced apart Marlon Moraes. What were your thoughts on his performance?
I mean, he did everything he needed to. He got taken down twice, but didn't let it affect him and controlled things on the feet. Moraes doesn't throw a lot of strikes. He never has. And Font took advantage of that. A ton of volume, and he landed what he threw. 33 strikes landed out of 41 thrown. 30 of them were significant. So neither one of these guys really were going after each other a ton other than Moraes trying to get Font to the ground, which he did successfully, like I said. I mean, 2 takedowns in just under 4 minutes is pretty impressive. But Font was able to scramble, was able to get to his feet, not let it affect him, and he just dominated this fight when it was standing.
For sure. So over to the rankings. I don't know what's next for Moraes. He's not going to get cut, but it's just been a brutal run for him as of late. And I don't know. It is tough to see, in my opinion. But what do you think's next for him?
It's interesting because Moraes is a guy that still has plenty of future. It's just been a bad slide for him here. There's guys. I mean, Dominic Cruz, Rafael Sanchao. There are guys there that I think are on probably a similar playing field to where he's at right now. Again, it's just what the UFC thinks that they've got, kind of similar to Greg Hardy, but at even a higher level because Moraes is a guy that 6 months ago we were talking about a legitimate title contender, and now here he stands 7th in the rankings and without an option. So I don't really know where to go with Marlon Moraes at this point. He's in a rough spot because this bantamweight division is stacked, and I don't know what to do. He's lost 3 of 4. Rafael Sanchao's lost 3 in a row. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's somebody for him to fight. It's just a matter of the UFC deciding what they want to do with him in the future and if they see him as someone that can challenge Piotr Jan for that title.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And for Rob Font, I think so. Edgar Sandhagen, that's confirmed. Aljamain Sterling's getting the Piotr Jan fight. I don't know what's next for him because Cody Garbrandt still wants to go down for the 125 title. I don't know. It's an interesting situation. Dillashaw's coming back. It's nuts. I don't know. I think he has to wait for some things to shuffle out. What do you have to say?
Yeah, he's gonna wait a little bit because this is really the star-making performance for him, and he's gonna have to figure it out from there. But it's a big jump for him, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Definitely. All right. Two great fight. Great fight. Pereira Lima versus Chaos Williams. You know, what we found out was that when Lima takes it seriously, he's a threat to pretty much anybody, I think. He's big for the division. He's strong. He has an array of skill sets that can propel him to win. What were your thoughts on this matchup?
Michael Pereira Lima, the Juju Smith-Schuster of the UFC. But this was really impressive because Chaos Williams was a guy that probably wasn't going to take it from me, but was up there on my list in terms of fighter of the year. And he may have put himself legitimately in that conversation. He's probably a top 5 guy for me. He probably moves up on that list if he beats Lima. But he looked really good in this fight. And he got outlanded by Williams, but he was able to control it. He just seemed like he was in control of this fight for 3 rounds. And there were some times that it seemed like Williams had some opportunities, but despite getting outstruck, it seemed like Pereira Lima was in control of pace and knew exactly where this fight was going. The 2 takedowns are huge when it comes to scoring for him, and it was enough for him to get the decision win.
For sure. And, he landed nearly the same amount of strikes as Chaos, and he threw 3/4 of the strikes that he threw. So he was very efficient this fight. And I don't know. I like seeing him serious because I think when he's playing the game seriously, he's a true threat. All right. What do you think's next for Chaos?
He's obviously still an outstanding prospect, obviously a guy that is going to be in an amazing position once 2021 starts. I can see him getting some opportunities, but after a loss here, his first in UFC, I can see them taking it a little bit slow with him. Who that would be, I don't entirely know, but Chaos Williams is a guy to watch out for in 2021. I could see him taking a huge jump depending on where he gets put into fights.
Definitely, I have to agree with you there. And for Lima, I say we give him Lawler. I think he deserves a top 15 matchup, and I think Robbie Lawler would be a good fight for him because he'd have to take it seriously. And I don't know, I like Lima, and I think that'd be a great fight to make. What do you have to say?
Absolutely. Challenge him, give him the opportunity to prove that he's legitimately on the way up and that he can take everything seriously.
Definitely. All right, to the co-main event, Jose Aldo versus Chito Vera. Chito Vera outlanding Jose Aldo, but Jose Aldo controlling him on the back for pretty much the whole third round, giving him the decision win. Jose Aldo, he looks great. He showed some things here. He showed his ground ability, and I think I think this was a little bit too much for Cheeto too much of a bite for him. I think it was a pretty big step up for him, but I think he proved that he's in this division to stay. But what were your thoughts on this matchup?
This was the Jose Aldo we were expecting to see when he moved to bantamweight, and he finally showed up. So, I mean, the split decision against Moraes, okay. He looked fine in that fight. He's looked not great ever since, and he actually showed up in this fight against Marlon Vera. And I think that's really impressive. I think that has shown how he's grown even later in his career. He's obviously a legend. We talk about that every time his name's brought up on this podcast. But to see him adjust in this way late in his career is really impressive. And I think I was starting to write him off as somebody that could contend at bantamweight. And I'm not so sure about that. I think he could legitimately not necessarily be in the conversation as a title contender, but in the conversation as someone that can make noise at the top of that division and can cause some problems for people that are on
Yeah,
the
I
way
have
up.
to. Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And for Vera, I mean, this was like I said, this was a lot for him to bite off, but he showed some good stuff here against somebody who's so experienced in Jose Aldo. So I think Marlon's someone to look out for in the next couple of years as he rises up to the top. But let's talk about what's next for these guys. For Marlon Vera, it's kind of tough because the division's so stacked. But what do you think's next?
The bridge too far for him. There's guys, like I said, very similar to what I said about Marlon Reich. There's guys for him to fight. It's just a matter of the UFC making that match, seeing what exactly fits for Marlon Vera and what they think of him moving forward.
For sure. And for Jose Aldo, I think Dillashaw should be next for Jose Aldo. I mean, they're Jose Aldo wants his belt back. No, Dillashaw rather wants his belt back. I think that's the fight to make. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. It's a really good fit, and I think it's something I would want to see personally.
Definitely. So to the main event of the evening, Stephen Thompson versus Jeff Neal. Stephen Thompson showing no signs of slowing down here. Uh, uh, Typical footwork, typical volume from him, and he just looked great doing it. But Jeff Neal, I think he's a prospect to look out for. He fought very well. He turned it on in the fifth round. What were your thoughts on this one? I enjoyed this one a lot.
It was a great fight, and it was a vintage Wonder Boy performance here against Jeff Neal. And like you said, Jeff Neal, 30 years old, is legitimately somebody to watch out for. But Wonder Boy's not going away anytime soon. This was a really impressive performance out of him. I don't want to say that I had written him off, but I was ready with him at the age of 37 to sort of ride off into the sunset after losing two of his last three and three of his last five, to move into a little bit of a lesser role. I'm not sure I had that picked out right after seeing this fight against Jeff Neal. He looked great, and it was, like I said, vintage Stephen Thompson. Fill it up with all kinds of volume. 191 strikes, 171 significant, and he threw over 400 strikes, which is absolutely ridiculous. So this was a great fight. I was really impressed by what I saw out of Stephen Thompson, and Jeff Neal's not anybody to be messed with either.
For sure. So for Jeff Neal, it's kind of an interesting situation. He doesn't appear to have dropped in the rankings, which makes sense in my opinion. But I think getting someone up at the top upper half of the top 10 would be good for him. I think Stephen Thompson was a pretty big step up. What are your thoughts on what's next for him?
Uh, it's tough to say because this is such a competitive division. I feel like I keep saying it on this, but there's plenty of guys for him to fight. It's just a matter of figuring out who it is and who's got the ability to do it on whatever time frame they want to put him on. Because at the age of 37, I could see him very easily, picking and choosing exactly who he wants to fight and when he wants to do it. Like he hadn't fought since November 2019, leading up to this fight. So I don't know. I think it's definitely a spot where he can decide what he wants when the UFC puts that offer sheet on the table.
Yeah, and as for Thompson, I think Masvidal's the fight to make. I think that'd be a great rematch. Masvidal's improved a lot since their last match up with against Thompson. What do you have to say?
Yeah, that's a solid. I was totally mixed up on who you were talking about. I was talking about Stephen Thompson that entire time. Masvidal would be a good fight, and I think if it comes across the table, that's what he would be interested in. As for Jeff Neal, it's an interesting proposition because he did have those medical issues earlier in the year where he may want to take a little bit of a layoff after this. I'm not entirely sure, but there's plenty of options for him. And Stephen Thompson against Jorge Masvidal, I want that, and I want it now.
I do want it now. All right. So, UFC confirms fight week schedule. 3 fight cards in 1 week. 16, Holloway versus Cater. The 20th, Edwards versus Shemaev, and the 23rd, which is McGregor versus Poirier. I can't wait. It's 4 weeks away, I think. But hey, I can't be more excited.
I'm fired up for it.
All right. Couple of I know Nunes versus Megan Anderson is what is it? Scheduled for March, and
Yep.
Dern versus Ansaroff in April. What do you have? Do you have any news?
Israel Adesanya got his purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh yeah, we that was 2 weeks ago, I think.
Oh, did we miss?
Yeah, we forgot to talk about that.
Hey, he got it.
He got it. Good for him, man. And then apparently Greg Jackson is considering a congressional run in New Mexico. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's I don't know.
I don't know either. Oh, did you hear about Tito Ortiz's first city council meeting?
Do I want to?
Apparently it was a train wreck.
I'm sure it was.
I'm sure it was too.
I'm sure it was. He got elected because he's anti-mask, so
Yeah.
I can tell you a lot.
I mean, I don't get what they were expecting when they
It's Orange County, California, man. No one
like
knows what to expect.
yeah. I don't know. Apparently it's on YouTube, so I'll probably
We should probably just do a review of that.
I mean, if it's 20 minutes, I'd be down to review.
Do like a
I'd be
live reaction.
hold on, let me see I'm curious. If it's like 20 minutes, that'd actually be pretty fun to do. Um uh, no, but there's videos of him getting roasted at his city council meeting. So, yep, I'm down to watch it. All right. You got anything else?
I do not, my friend.
Nor do I. All right. Well, we'll probably catch you guys for a year-end review, and then I think we're gonna take a break. We've been cranking these out. I think
For 5 months.
yeah, we just need to take a break, relax, and then we'll be back in full force next year. But after our year-end review, we'll be chilling for a few weeks, but we'll be back. No worries. All right, Daniel, thanks for coming back on, and we will see you later.